Hello and welcome back to the Inquisitor podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have James Legg, CEO of the brilliantly named Thycotic. James, welcome.
Welcome. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. James, could you give the audience 60-second to 90-second intro into who you are and your journey to get to where you are today?
Sure, Marcus. So I started in the tech field almost 30 years ago at a company called Computer Associates. And after a few years, I noticed a small company out of Texas called BMC Software, which I think today is one of the top 5 largest software companies. I moved to Sugar Land, Texas to work for them. They were fairly small, 200 and some employees. And after 5 years there, I was promoted into management, then left BMC to work for a company named Peregrine. And the founder of BMC was a guy named John Moores who owned Peregrine. We had a successful IPO. And then I ended up going to a startup in Houston called PentaSafe, which had, at the time, between 10 to 15 employees. I ran sales, was really the only salesperson. And in 7 years, we went from 15 employees to over 300. And we were acquired by NetIQ for about $260 million. I then went back to that same house with another group of people, predominantly the same guys I started the first one with, though. And there was a company called Idera, same thing, just a couple employees. We grew that company to over 300. And at that point, which had an exit. And at that point, a group of investors that I had a long relationship with asked me to come and take over an investment they had in Philadelphia that had about 30 employees, a company called PhD Virtual. And I became the CEO of PhD. And in about 3 years, we tripled in size. We were acquired by a company called Unitrends for about 3 to 4 times what we had in the company. And then those same investors 5 years ago acquired Thycotic from the founder and asked me to come in and run and build the company. I was actually a part of the due diligence process. And upon my arrival 5 years ago, the company, which was headquartered in Washington, D.C., had 40 employees and it stopped growing. So spin it forward now 5 years. And in 2020, our orders will be over 100 million and we will surpass 500 employees. So from 40 to 500 in 40 years is what I think you consider to be hyper growth, and
Absolutely.
I'm very blessed in that challenge.
So obviously this conversation is really about how you grow and manage to keep the wheels on a hyper growth business. What are the 4 most common questions people ask you about building a fast growth business like Thycotic?
Yeah, so a couple of things I get asked a lot about is, my investors want to know, what can I do to continue to drive growth and how we will allocate investments to fully capture that growth going forward. And first and foremost, you have to look at having a solid addressable market. And in the PAM space, which is the privileged access control space, we are in a space that's roughly $2 billion and growing. Wow. So the second thing you have to look at, in my opinion, is, do you have the right people and the right employees that can unify you as a team and help capture this high growth opportunity? And you must have the right people, and they have a relentless passion and pursuit for the direction of the company and the direction that you want to go in. We incent out of the box thinking, and we have constant conversations about strategic directions and the products that we're going in. And we constantly look at what the competition is doing and how we can do what they do better, and then how we can kind of change the game and do things in a different way. So we look at how we do it better, and we look at what we can do to have out-of-the-box ideas they don't have. Our primary competitor was 20 times our size when I came to the company 5 years ago, and we were not even one of the top 5 players in the PAM space. Today, we are clear number 2 in this space, and that validation just came as recently as this month from Kuppinger Cole that put us at number 2, leapfrogging 2 or 3 people that were ahead of us just last year. Today, our prime competitor is only 3 times our size. At one time, they were 20 times our size. Now they are just over 3 times our size. So we've made up significant ground and have had a high growth rate. The third thing I look at is, do we have a way to measure our customer success and their happiness and take appropriate actions? How do we keep our customers involved in the process? How do we keep them engaged? And how do we keep them happy? An example I have of that is I have an architectural review board or committee, and I have 10 of the Fortune 1000 companies on that board. And we meet quarterly and now have an annual offsite meeting to discuss our strategic directions and validate the market trends and what they're seeing. So we literally drive the direction of our product 100% off of customer feedback and customer needs and desires. And then I have really two or three more things going to that equation is our sales and distribution model. And I think that that's something that, I know you've interviewed some guys that have come out of BMC, and I think we've taken some of what we learned in BMC 25 years ago and then changed it, tweaked it, modeled it. But our sales distribution is a combination of both direct and channel based. It's field AMs, people out in the field in the prospective territories, inside sales, a channel team, and SDRs, sales development resources, that drum up leads for that team. We have additional account managers that sometimes are specific to verticals or products, and they may target a very specific audience, but all that goes into the equation of our distribution model. And as I said, we have named and what we call SMB or mid-tier account managers. In international, I do something a little different because we built it from scratch 5 years ago. We had no international employees when I came to the company. Today, we have about 150, and we are in about a half a dozen countries. We have offices in about a half a dozen countries, but they sell 100% through the channel. And that's because we built it from scratch. When I took over the company in the US, we had about 6 or 7 direct sales reps, and they had no channel at all. So it's very hard. You don't want to break your revenue stream to go to an all-channel model. So we have a hybrid model in the US, which is roughly 50% direct, 50% channel. And then internationally, we're 100% channel. And then I know I mentioned my management team a little bit, but I want to tell you, management team is really critical. And Marcus, you have to hire and retain the most talented people that are better than you are and know how to build out a company like this one. And like I said, the people that I've surrounded myself with, 4 of my 5 sales VPs have an average tenure with me of over 10 years, 2 of them over 20 years. And I trust and know they are experienced builders from the previous companies that we have all worked at together, and they support our model. So they will also hire top-notch people like themselves and upgrade when necessary. I will say the $10 million company I inherited 5 years ago is different from a management perspective at 100 million, and it will be different from a management perspective at 500 million. It's a different skill set. And my goal is to coach and bring people up, but you also have to bring in people from the outside when you're going from 40 people to 1,000 people. And then the last thing I'll say is the revenue machine is only as good as the infrastructure that supports it.
Absolutely.
So you have to have a solid CRM. We had a homegrown CRM. I brought in Salesforce. I've purchased Salesforce at 3 different companies, and I have a very set of customized reports that I build and look at every single week, run every week, track all the metrics on the business. The ability to make great decisions is the ability to have great information. And you must identify a team like marketing that you hold accountable for the number of leads, for the number of downloads, for the number of people that hit the website, for social media, things like that. You also have a sales team that you hold accountable for revenue, trials, downloads, et cetera, et cetera. You have a channels team that you hold accountable for incremental deals, incremental leads, and actual revenue they bring to your organization. And then an SDR team that helps develop leads and moves those leads to the sales team. And then how many leads they get to convert to an op, and then how many ops that converts to a sale. All of that is something that we look at constantly, daily, weekly, and reward based upon those targets, or in some cases, what we call MBOs, which are objectives that we give to the team.
I'm really curious to find out how you manage to grow without compromising on recruitment. Because if you're growing at that sort of scale, it must be such a tough job to be able to constantly be recruiting and feeding the funnel with good quality candidates and then onboard them. So what's your approach to that?
So, that's a great question. And I got to be candid. We pretty much do all our recruiting internally. I have 5 full-time recruiters and a manager over that team. And we are in a constant ongoing recruiting, interviewing, always looking to improve and hire and retain the best people. We have a full-blown onboarding process. In fact, not only from a channel partners perspective, but from an onboarding process, we have hundreds of videos, and we make them go through the videos. And at the end of the videos, they take a test, and they go through an extensive, like 1 week of training. But onboarding also is critical to how successful employees are. So we always demand they come to our headquarters here or our international headquarters and spend like a week really going through this process, watching all the videos, getting an understanding of the technology before we put them into the field. It's a constant process, onboarding and looking for new hires and account managers. I mean, we literally, although we did cut back some of our new hires this year with COVID, because we just need to make sure, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but we literally have been hiring over 100 employees a year now, for the last 3-4 years. And that's a dubious task when you are hiring that fast. And the market, up until a month ago was incredibly tough because there's just a ton of jobs and just not that many people specifically in the market for cybersecurity.
So to take the conversation a little bit deeper then, when you're onboarding people, obviously once you've done that initial week, then the managers need to be onboarding, training, coaching, developing, holding accountable. How do they manage their time given that you're growing at such scale, the business is being driven at such pace? How do they make time to ensure that they're giving their people enough coaching and enough support? Because that first 120 days is critical for onboarding new hires, particularly in sales or in channel. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is, I don't want to give you too many of my secrets, but one of the things that we do is each one of the managers has, a team of roughly 8 people. And these are the sales managers. I know for a fact the best salespeople don't always make the best managers, but you have to have sales managers that are good sellers. That's it, end of story, and understand and know the technology. So the first 90 to 180 days, we literally demand that they're intimately involved and on calls with those reps, with every one of the decision makers or the person that's doing the evaluation of the products and is working with them through the process. Because when you get a cybersecurity person on the phone and these guys are getting pulled in 50 directions, they're one of the busiest and smartest people in any shop. You've got about 2 minutes to articulate a message to them that is going to tweak their interest. If you can't do it, you're off the phone with them and they're not going to talk to you again. And when you get these people back on the phone, when they're evaluating your technology, you better know when they ask you a question, you better be able to articulate the answer or get them an answer really quick. So one of the things that is something I've always used in my models that has worked at every one of my last 4 companies is I just demand management involvement with specifically with new people, but even ongoing as people, as we coach them up and work with them, it's got to be a process where it's a train the trainer thing. These managers are training their guys, they're coaching them, they're bringing them along. And basically 50% of the managers in my sales organization have all been groomed and promoted from within. Or some of those guys that, I think the business may have outgrown them a little bit. We've moved them into other roles that also, around sales operations and also helping facilitate and, with the sales organization. Because the DNA that a lot of these guys acquired when this company had 10, 15, 20, 30 employees is not something that you're just going to magically wake up one day and know. So we have a good process that is ongoing after the initial training.
I interviewed Tom Castley from Outreach a couple of weeks ago, and he made a really interesting observation, which is that the best salespeople very rarely make the best managers, but the ones that have the greatest penetration of their accounts frequently make the best managers. So in terms of the portfolio and the range of products that they sell within an account, I don't know whether or not that's something that you've observed.
I think there's some, absolutely some validity to that. You always have people also that break your model. You can give one guy 5 accounts and he makes his quota, and you can give another guy 100 accounts and he'll make his quota. But if you gave the guy that had 100 accounts 5 accounts, he couldn't make his quota because you have, hunters and farmers, and then you have kind of in between. So you know what? There is no magical formula. It's kind of like picking stocks. There's no magical formula to doing it. You just have to keep tweaking, changing, being able to be mobile and make changes as you make mistakes or as you see things and ways to do it better. And I built 4 startups in a row, and in a market where 90 to 95% of these startups fail, and I had 4 successful ones, I was very blessed and learning a lot along the way. I will be the first to admit, I've made a lot of mistakes.
What was your best mistake?
Oh man, this probably isn't, something you want to hear, but I would say a couple of the companies I built, I sold out too early. I shouldn't have sold them out because I think they grew to be much bigger. I did all the foundational work with my team, and we built a lot of these companies to $50 or $100 million. And today now they're exponentially bigger than they were. So, but then again, it might not have been a mistake because I wouldn't be at this company now, which this is by far my biggest and best and most desirable accomplishment that I've ever had in my life. This is like the nirvana of my career.
What is it you love about it then?
It's everything, down to the innovation, down to our technology, down to the people. I have an incredible team of people, and everybody here is like family. And when you build something from scratch, you really learn the business. And it's a culmination of 30 years of being in this business. And I would say 80% of my management team has all worked with me for a long time. And it's just a rhythm. You get in a rhythm, and I'm in a rhythm with these guys.
I wanted to ask you about the rhythm in terms of the cadence and the rhythm that you've evolved as chief executive. What are the things that you do every day, every week, every month that allow you to maintain that rhythm and stay on track?
Yeah, so I think we constantly have to question ourselves and ask things like, how can we do better? How can we be better? Like, for example, on decisions, if you want to have hypergrowth, and I consider hypergrowth 35 to 50% range, and our CAGR has been in that 40+% range now for 5 years. COVID may slow us down a little bit, but I think that you have to constantly, like I said, constantly recruiting, looking for better talent. You have to find ways to constantly make people more productive. And a lot of times that requires change, not just changing out people, but changing the way people do things. And you have to constantly look at how you're going to improve your distribution model. And we're talking all the time about, do we focus more on the channel? Since we are all channel in Europe and we really want to penetrate these top 1,000 accounts internationally, do we have maybe a direct and channels model similar to what I have in the US, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So we're always, looking at ways that we can improve and how we can grow the company faster.
One of the things that's come through in all the interviews I've been doing for this Hypergrowth podcast is that the leadership team is very happy to have stand-up fights, and they just get stuck in, and there's a lot of fighting. And when they come out of it, they agree, they make a decision, and then they all back it. Talk to me about the kind of culture that you have to have in order to be able to survive in that kind of environment and to thrive where there is a lot of constructive conflict.
Well, yeah, you have conflicts. You have people that want to go in specific and different types of directions. And every quarter we have like a offsite meeting where the whole management team gets together. It's not about sales. It's not about the channel. It's about the direction of the company. And there's always a subset of people in the company that feels we should be going in this direction. And I won't get technical with you, but some people think we should go more into multi-factor authentication. Some people think we should try to be end-to-end single sign-on for everything from the time you sign in, not having any passwords at all. And the team sits there and debates this in a very healthy way. And then we take all the information we have from those smart brainiacs, also all the information we're getting from our customers. And then we also have a really strong product management team that basically is out in front of customers also on a regular ongoing basis. And it's a combination of everybody colluging ideas together and coming up with, this is the direction we're headed in. And I think that if you look at some of the things that we've done recently, we really have been changing the game. In fact, I just had some investment bankers reach out to me and they're like, we are impressed with what you guys are doing. In fact, we talk to CISOs all the time, and they don't want to talk about zero trust. Zero trust is a marketecture term. Everybody has a different meaning for what zero trust is. But what CISOs are worried about, they're worried about privileged rights and permissions. That's where 80% of all breaches are occurring. People have these rights and these permissions. They can get to this data and this information, and a lot of times they can do it and not be traced. So that's what's important, or that's what's relevant to our customers. And that's our PM team, my development team, and my management team. We meet every quarter and we lay out the roadmap on the board. Or we put it up on a bunch of slides. We say, this is where we're going. This is what we think. And in 6 months, and we meet every week too, and we review the development plan after we come up with, this is where we're going and what we're going to do. And so I think that's critical to that culture that we're building. I wouldn't say we have so much infighting. Yeah, we have disagreements. And when we sit down and we talk, we work through the disagreements. And hey, I've had my mind changed a lot, and same with everybody on my team.
It's really about the constructive side of conflict rather than destructive that I was referring. I'm curious, one of the other things that seems to be coming through is that there's a lot of diversity in the team and a lot of input from different directions. And that certainly seems to be something that's very healthy. And what we see in a lot of the more successful businesses is they encourage diversity because that allows people to have the whole picture rather than their very narrow blinkered view. Have you consciously gone out and deliberately recruited a diverse team? Or is that something that it's been forced on you just because of the nature of the kind of business that you're in? Or is it something other than that?
So I think I have a diverse team, but again, going back to, I'm the type of guy that tries to surround myself with A+ talent. And like I said, people that are better than I am. And you can coach talent, but you can't create speed. Either you're a good athlete or you're not. So I have to look for athletes that maybe be a little, maybe can be coached up. And my management team, with the amount of time I've spent with them and the number of these deals that we've done together, I think all but 2 of my direct reports have worked with me in the past at other companies. So is it diverse? Probably not as diverse as it would be. I mean, I hate to acknowledge this, but 80 to 90% of our resumes are males. I would like to have more females on my management team. I do have some, but it's just the nature of the beast in cyber. And I don't know why. I've never seen anything like it. But going back to my management team, I believe in giving your leadership team basically freedom to succeed. Don't micromanage them. Don't always have all the answers. Listen and give them the rope to make critical decisions. Those decisions they will own. I'm just not a big fan of micromanagement, but I am a big fan of communicating frequently with that team and talking to them about the decisions. I talk to every VP on a week, at least once a week. And in some cases with my critical sales VPs, we talk every single day. So I think I've given them clarity on what our expectations are, what our goals are. And obviously, as I said, communication's key. And the last thing I always tell my guys, if you're not having fun, you shouldn't be here. We work so many hours. People on my team, I usually start working at 5 a.m. and I don't finish until 6 p.m. almost every day. And if you don't enjoy what you do, you can't do that. So you got to love what you do, or this just isn't the place for you.
So this is really great. Tell me, what are the 3 questions that people should ask, but they just don't in terms of scaling and growing at pace?
I don't know if this isn't scaling, but what are the 3 questions people should ask me about scaling and growing, or just in general? Because I think one of the things is, as I said, what can we do to constantly make better and smarter decisions? And what can we do to continue with our growth? People should ask, how can I always make people more productive? Because that's going to be the key. You can hire 9 people. As the saying goes, you're not going to have a baby in 1 month. It takes time to build out an organization. It has to be methodical, has to be well thought through, and has to be planned out. So we lay out a plan. We say, here's the answer. Here's where we want to be at the end of the year. We want to grow this much. We want to have this much revenue in the channel. We want to have this much revenue in the direct. And we want to have this much revenue coming in from marketing. And we want to have this much revenue coming in from the sales development team. And so we build a plan backwards based upon where we want to go. So we articulate a goal and a plan. And I think that's one of the main things that you need to do as a company if you want to continue to grow and be successful.
How often do you revise that plan then? Because it's with the pace of growth that you guys are going through, and it sounds to me like you must be growing, 50, 80% a quarter? How often do you have to revise the plan because you've already overtaken where you expected to be?
Well, we probably adjust and tweak. We made a small change to our plan because of the COVID deal, but I have traditionally put together a plan every year. And for the last 19 quarters straight, we have hit that plan or exceeded that plan 19 quarters in a row. So when you build a plan and you can basically execute on that plan, it makes everything easy. Your investors are happy, the company's happy. And in fact, one of the things talking about the company being happy, we do what we call a net promoter score internally. And we also do a survey on a regular basis where people have a choice where, we don't know who it is who says it. It just all goes to HR and then they come back. But our net promoter score is higher than companies like Google and Amazon. So our goal is to make sure our people are happy and that they like what they're doing. But we have been very blessed in the plan that we built and executing on that plan. So yes, we've had to make minor tweaks from a development perspective, our minor tweaks. We're constantly looking at it and tweaking it. But when it comes to, we have a unified front, everybody's marching to, this is the plan from a financial perspective, and this is what we're marching to. We have been very successful in building a plan like that and doing that.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Tell me this, what are the differences in running a $50 million business to a $100 million business to a $500 million business? What are those sort of sea changes that you need to see in structure, in management, in controls?
Well, I can give you an example. Like when we were a $10 million business, we'll start there.
Yeah.
When we were a $10 million business, to be candid with you, we had people that were wearing 5 hats. Everybody was doing 5 different jobs. There wasn't, that was the way it was. There wasn't enough bandwidth internally. So we would have one person that would do the pricing committee. That same person would do the customer care. That same person would do the maintenance renewals. That's it. Now, once you get to 100 million, all of a sudden you have very specific people. I have one person that does customer care and runs a customer care team. It's not one person doing 5 jobs. Now it's one person managing a team of people. I have a pricing committee, and that pricing committee is made up of 4 or 5 people, and one guy runs that pricing committee. A whole another person that runs my advisory council board, and he has a team or a lady or 2 that he works with to set that up. Whereas all of those, when you're 10 million, you have a bunch of people wearing a bunch of hats because you just don't have the bandwidth. In fact, the channel is another really good example. We had no channel here. And basically the sales guys were also the channels guys, which, as you know, direct sales guys don't make good channels guys. So we hired channels experts. And I have a guy named Bob and a guy named Simon. Bob was named Channel Chief of the Year by CRN for the last 10 years, meaning one of the top 10 channel guys in the country by CRN. And he's worked with me for 10 years, and he's built out several channels organizations from scratch. Simon, my guy running internationally, he's a channels model kind of guy, which when I started building internationally, I couldn't just go out and hire 200 people. I needed to get revenue. And the way to get the broadest coverage is to go to an all channels model. So we told all the partners, hey, sign on. We're going to go to a 2-tier distribution model, but everything goes through the channel. There's a deal that comes through in the UK, it's yours, AlphaGen. If there's a deal that comes through yours in DAC, it's yours. And so we gave that to the distributors and the partners, and they likewise invested and actually hired reps to sell our products on their own dime, given the fact that we were 100% channel and international and building out the channel from 0 to 50% in 5 years in the US. But that's some of the things you have to do. I'm trying to think of what else. Go back to the question again. You got me.
What's the difference in terms of the structures, controls that you need to build between a 10, a 50, 100, 500 million? In terms of where you're headed now, what are the changes that you believe you're going to need to implement so that you can scale to the 500 million mark?
Yeah, I get really granular in my reporting capabilities. So whereas before I would just look like the overall pipeline of the company, I would just look at the overall operation of the company. I look at just the overall big deals and revenue of the company. I get very granular in each region. You got to understand, when we were 10 million, we had no regions. It was basically just the guys in Washington, D.C., pretty much all 40 people, a couple remote people, but that's it. Now we have offices like in London, office in Germany, office in Australia, office in the Philippines. So those regions, we have very specific reporting and very specific processes that we have in place that they have to adhere to. And, as the company gets bigger and bigger and you build out more and more of these more and more global offices, which we have 5 or 6 now, and we're probably going to have 10 in another 2 to 3 years, you have to put processes in place like that from a reporting and infrastructure. The infrastructure of having a data center, and, we have invested heavily in the cloud. And the infrastructure associated with being in the cloud, because you have a lot of laws in remote places that say you have to store the data in the cloud locally. So when we have that, we have to build out data centers, or at least go through setting up a data center in order to do business in those countries. So as you get bigger as we are, it's just a lot different journey. I could probably sit down and spend an hour with you on the things that we have to do differently from 10 million to 100 million to 500 million. But needless to say, there is a lot that goes into doing that, and a lot of changes that we've done with our model and things like that.
Thank you. One of the things that a lot of people are very interested in is the kind of relationship one has to form with the investors. When you're starting out and you're at that 10 million mark, presumably the relationship is very different to where you are now and as you scale towards the billion. Talk me through the kind of journey you go through and the kind of qualities you look for in investors in the early stage.
So very interesting story is, so Thycotic has been also very blessed in the fact that besides my investors buying out the majority of the founder and the company, we have never taken money as a company. So we have no investor. The investors bought out the founder. I have never had to take their money, which is funny because I met with an executive at Cisco, and I told them that we've never taken any money from any outside investors and never had a round A, round B, round C. Some stuff on the internet that says I've had a round A. I haven't ever had a round A. Right. And he looked me straight in the face and he said, "You, my friend, are a unicorn." He goes, "This is the Valley and everybody here burns cash." And you look at, they're all burning cash. But we as a company, we don't burn cash at all. And so my relationship with my investors is very good. I've known my current investors. I've had only 2 sets of investors in my 4 companies. My current investors I've known for, the chairman of my board I've known for over 20 years. He, just like I said, he respects me and trusts me. And I don't have to go to him for money, because I don't have to go to him for money. I don't really have an issue of anything with contention or him really micromanaging me. You need to find good investors that you trust. My investor is Insight Ventures. They're the ones that bought out a big chunk of the founder. Insight is one of the top 3, certainly in cybersecurity, but really in all technology. And these guys are really good. They're really smart. When I need their help, when I'm doing due diligence on a company, or I'm looking to make an acquisition, which we predominantly have grown all organically. So we just made our first acquisition in 2 years, and it was nominal money, like a couple $100,000. We buy technology. We don't buy revenue. We grow organically. But I ask for their help in that due diligence process. And I also bounce a lot of ideas off of them, not only in my board meetings, but I talk to my board guys. In fact, I talked to my chairman yesterday. I have 4 board guys. I've talked to every one of those guys numerous times over the last 30 days. So I think that you've got to have a board that supports you, and you got to have a board that can help you, because that really goes into the equation. Insight is just not into micromanaging people and really beating you up. They're more into, hey, how can we make things better? How can we help you? And how can we, with the decisions that you're making, how can we be a part of that and building a better company? And like I said, when I came into the company, my background was I was the CEO of a virtual cloud company. And after 3 years, we were acquired. When I came to Thycotic, I told the founder at the time and the head of development, guys, we got to go to the cloud. Everything is going to the cloud. So we embarked on that journey. And about 3 years ago, we came out with 3 years ago, we came out with a full feature, full parity, 100% identical to our on-prem product in the cloud. That product grew 600% last year. And I got to tell you, we were named by, I think it was Forrester, as the leader in the cloud PAM space. So we literally beat everybody to the market. Our 2 competitors to this day still don't have a full featured cloud product. So we've made some lucky decisions, I guess, but the cloud component of our business is continuing to do well, and it's going to continue to explode. And it's where we're investing. I mean, we're continuing to build out and keep up to date with our on-prem product, but our cloud product has been growing like crazy, and the company's growing like crazy because of it, and being the only legitimate full-blown PAM solution in the cloud, in our opinion.
Okay, this then moves me on to the next point, which is, what's your overall strategy when it comes to, I'm not looking for any inside secrets, but what's your overall strategy when it comes to assessing the marketplace and your place in the competitive landscape and how you're going to stay ahead of the competition and where you're going to pick your fights. I'm really curious to find out about that.
So, that's a good question. I got to tell you, what we do is 5 years ago, we had a point solution and we were not an enterprise solution. And so we embarked upon building an enterprise solution over the next 3 years. And then all of a sudden we started just chipping away at the bigger enterprise type products. And we built out a true full-blown enterprise solution. And we had to put a lot of features and functions in there that our competitors had because they were requirements that all our customers and customers that were evaluating wanted. So we did that. But once we got to where we had like 99% of what they have, and we do now, then we said, okay, how can we change the game? Now we have to be seen as a leader in this market. Not only was the cloud one of the ways that we are clearly seen as a leader in the market and named as a leader in this market, but we have to look at doing things differently. You got to understand, we basically sit in the heart of the enterprise with our products. I mean, we manage the passwords. We watch privileged and powerful users. We look at people's behaviors. We are literally in the crux or in the heart of the data center. So we have to now think forward because we're seen as a leader in the market by a lot of the bankers and investors. We have to think forward about what can we do differently? What is the future? How do we change the game? Is the future that, hey, you're going to log in through multi-factor authentication. I'm going to determine who you are, and I'm going to give you the ability to do whatever you want. And you're never going to have to remember another password again because I'm going to have a passwordless technology. Or is it, I want to build more cloud products and I want to get more into the IAM space for very specific use cases around my specific product, which is a very niche market. So, or do I want to control privileged, powerful users like what a DBA does, because that's a very powerful user and probably has the most power of most people in any shop. So now we're at a point now, and we have been for the last 12 months, on how do we change the playing field? How do we change the game? How do we become seen as a technology innovator and leader in this market? And that's what we're doing right now. We are definitely changing the game. I think just by going to the cloud is just one example, but I think if you look at an acquisition that we just made and some of the things that we're doing with that technology, I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to continue growing this business like I know we will.
So again, I'd just like to take this a little bit further because when you are in the position that you're in, the obvious place to go is to target your competitors' best accounts. And again, not looking for any trade secrets, but what's your philosophy about displacement when you're training and you're communicating to your channel and your direct sales force about displacing the competition?
So obviously we're doing a lot of displacements because we're the second guys to market, but we have the better solution now. And that's the honest truth. But, a lot of people have invested very heavily in our competition's product, millions and millions of dollars, and they're just not apt to throw it out. I tell my guys, look, if you have somebody that wants to replace a competitive product, then you know what? We have to engage and we have to spend time. The difference is it usually takes 5 times as much time and it's 5 times as hard as if you can win on the front end. Now, today, only about 50% of all the shops have a privilege management solution or an endpoint solution in place. So there's still a lot of greenfield out there, but my guys actively do pursue replacements, and we've replaced our competitor at some very large, big customers. We have another one that should happen this quarter. So yeah, we do go after them if we sense they're unhappy. And I would say roughly 25% of my competitors' customers are very unhappy. So we will continue to pursue those, but we will also continue to fight for the greenfield because we can win the greenfield super easy if they haven't spent millions and millions of dollars and if they haven't embedded the technology. Because as I said, we sit in the center of the data center. We sit in the center of the data center. And when you reside in the center of the data center and everything revolves through privileged access and the passwords, it's not some meaningless task to go in and replace you. The stuff is very sticky and it's hard to get out. But customers get to the point where they're so unhappy with our competitors that they replace them. And we have a big one going on right now that I think we're going to get.
So let me ask you this then, James. It's very easy for technology companies to spend their life talking about technology. But actually, what you're describing here is really fundamental to the viability of a business. How often are you guys engaging board level to board level and having conversations with the lines of business about what the implications are of breaches of security? Because essentially, if someone has access to the kind of stuff that you protect, it's like putting a fox in the hen house, isn't it? You guys engaging at the board level and having the high level line of business conversations as well?
Yeah, we're predominantly engaging more. It's really the security teams and the CISOs. And I have to watch, but let's say the largest hotel chain in the world was recently breached. And it was a privileged user that breach had occurred. And we just did a substantial transaction with them to acquire our technology to fix that problem. So when that occurs, and oh, by the way, that CISO sits on my advisory board. But when that occurs, all of a sudden, the insurance they wish they bought and hadn't bought, all of a sudden they really want to buy it bad now. And it's not death insurance because they're still alive, but it is medical insurance and they're sick and they need a fix. And a lot of times, IT is evolving and moving, and you as a CISO may have decided to, hey, my biggest issue is around malware. I have to get a product to address this, or I got to get a product to address endpoint management. And you prioritize things. But I would say most CISOs now realize that the market we're in is critical and that they have to address it. But they are the ones that would report to the board or to the CEO of the company. And in most companies, the CISO actually does report to the CEO of the company. And that's the highest we're getting at. Now, if I was a company like, say, Splunk, I bet Splunk, because they are big, or like a really big cybersecurity Symantec used to be, they probably get access to the CEOs of companies. And I doubt the board, but that wouldn't happen with our products. Not at this point.
Again, I hope you don't mind if I challenge you a little bit, but it sounds to me like what you're actually providing is a solution to a marketing problem. Because if there is a breach like that, and we've seen this with the various hotels and credit cards and airlines, their brand damage was astronomical and people lose trust. And anything that touches the customer is a marketing issue. So I'm curious whether or not you'd see it that way.
It's definitely a marketing issue because, your brand is damaged. I mean, I don't want to name names of companies that have been breached, but over the last year, there's probably been a dozen major breaches. And I would say half of those companies have bought our product after the breach. So the thing is like everybody just has their hair on fire and they have so much going on all the time. They have other issues, other fires. 5 years ago when I first started talking to companies about privileged access, only like the really like global 2,000 companies, were working to address this. None of the mid-tier or even companies that were up to $1 billion were even thinking about PAM in those days and privileged rights and users. Now it's on the top. It's on the top of everybody's mind. It's in almost every case, it's one of the top 3 things that people want to do. So I think that in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a lot of upside for this company. And I think that they will, work and focus on addressing this. But yeah, it's absolutely like, and again, I don't want to mention names on your podcast, but I know for a fact, one of our customers is a convenience store here. They just spent quite a bit of money with us. All the credit cards got breached. If they would have had my endpoint solution deployed, my gut is that would not have occurred. And now they're spending money with us to make sure it doesn't happen again. When you get a bad breach like that and you lose all your customers' credit cards or all credit information like happened with Equifax, which they didn't use my product, although they are a customer now, that damages your brand, damages it severely. I know I'm hesitant to give any information to Equifax or at all now that that's happened to them. I didn't mean to use their name, but I blurted it out already. But yeah, it definitely damages the brand and damages you from a marketing perspective.
Okay, James, thank you so much. This has been incredibly enlightening. I'd like to find out what it is that you're reading, watching, listening to that's influencing your business decisions, your evolution as a business leader.
It's a good question. Like the rest of the world, with all this COVID, I've been obsessed with some Netflix. I never really watched Netflix. And I turned on Tiger King and I just literally got sucked into Tiger King. And I got to tell you, I think Carol Baskin is guilty. I'm just for the record, I want to tell you that. But I've been reading also a great book written by my CMO, who's a 25-year colleague of mine, Steve Cahan. And Steve is my CMO. As I said, he's my partner. He's my lifelong friend. And his book is called How to Be a Startup Superstar. And he actually signed a copy because he actually forced me to buy 100 copies actually, but it's selling a lot. So I've got 100 copies. If you want one, I'll give you one. But the book covers much of our journey together. And having been a part of 3 or 4 startups with Steve, why join a startup over like a large corporation, or how to find and land the right startup? You know, if I said 95% of all startups fail, it's probably even higher than that. What are the 35 action items that I need to consider in making that decision? And then it also goes into building the startup and the unique journey and the unique skill set that goes into that and doing that. And to summarize, you know, he basically summarizes saying by you have to have a positive attitude, positive behavior. You have to have a willingness to succeed at almost all costs, you know, and I mean, sometimes even it costs people their families. I don't want that, but it's like you have to be like an athlete, like a football player or a basketball player, and you have to be and train at that level in order for you to be successful. So building startups under 10 million, which I've done quite a few, is a really risky endeavor. And I've been blessed, as I said, having 4 in a row. And I wouldn't change any of the events that have happened to me or anything that happened to me at this point. I may have made more financially had I gone with bigger companies, or had I held some of the other companies longer than I did. But I've had a lot of fun along the way, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, you know, we are a big company now, and I love it. I love what I'm doing, and I love working with my team.
Okay. Tell me something. If you had a golden ticket and you could advise the idiot James, age 23, who knew he was invincible and immortal, how to avoid a fundamental blunder in your life or a lifetime of idiocy and self-sabotage, what advice would you give him?
Coming from a sales background, we're kind of naturally paranoid people. But you know what? Paranoia makes you work really super hard. And what I have to tell, and my 3 boys also work in this technology field, growing up around me and being around my businesses, you come to the realization that there really is no substitute for hard work. I may not have been the best salesperson, but I guarantee you I would outwork anybody. And there's only one way to get to the top, and that is through hard work. There simply is no substitute for rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty in order to make things happen. And great achievements are possible or sustained, no great achievements without hard work. So hard work is something that you will pay the price for, but you will also succeed if you have that desire to achieve. And that's my recommendation. If I was a young whippersnapper and that's how I kind of approached every day, is like I would just come in and I would outwork everybody. Even if there was somebody that was a better sales guy than me and he could sling and close bigger deals, I was going to find a way to close more deals because I'd have to make up for it because I couldn't close as many deals that were bigger size. So
there's no denying you have ambition and drive.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so final question. What is it that you're struggling with? What are you wrestling with at the moment?
I would say that challenging the status quo. You know, we hear the old saying, if it ain't, I hate the word ain't because my mom was a grammar person, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But most every person or team that wants to become great has at some point had to challenge the status quo. And the pace of change that we're in right now is evolving rapidly, and it's incredible. And the ability to keep up with it is almost impossible. So when I was 23 years old and I went to BMC after my job at Computer Associates as a college kid, I was not from IBM like everybody else at BMC. And I challenged management to think differently because I was a round peg and the hole was square. And I know you interviewed Tom, but there was a subset of management at BMC when I first went there that all felt I should have been fired. In fact, I probably proved that I should have been fired, but I also proved to them that they needed to tweak their model. And just simple things that they wouldn't do, like they didn't want people to travel. They refused to discount their products because they had high-speed utilities that were replacing IBM. They didn't want to open any remote offices. 4 years later, I was promoted into management, and I opened their first remote office, and I never looked back. I know you interviewed Tom. I would be curious to know what he would tell you, but he would probably tell you that if there was one person that broke the rules at BMC when we were a small company, it was me. And my point is, you simply can't achieve and build success if you continue to do things the same way. So you have to think out of the box. You have to think differently, and you need to challenge the status quo. And I want my guys to challenge me, and I want everyone to challenge everybody on our team. So that's my message: is you got to constantly challenge and question the status quo.
That must mean you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and comfortable with failure. How do you identify people who cope well under pressure? In fact, they get better under pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I look for people that really will challenge me and prove me wrong. Those are like the best assets. I mean, I can't tell you, I'm wrong a lot. I think I'm right more than I'm wrong, that's for sure. But I am wrong a lot. And so I look for guys that are going to challenge me. They're going to say, no, man, this is messed up. You're doing this the wrong way. We need to think differently. And this is what I think we should do. Or let's huddle as a team and come up with alternatives because this is broken. It's not working. So I really look for people that will constantly make me think differently. If we want to keep growing this company and we want to go to 500 million, we're going to have to fill this company with people that are going to think out of the box, think differently, and figure out how we're going to pull ahead of our competition.
So we've come to the end of the hour. Tell me this, how can people who want to join your team get hold of you or your recruitment people?
You can go online, I think, on our website, and it has on there, job openings that we have. And I think I don't have the website up in front of me. It'd take me more than a minute to look it up. But there is a way to go through there, and it goes automatically right into that HR team of recruiters that I was telling you about, and they will review the resume and then, see if there is a fit. And if there is, we will reach out to you. I mean, we are still hiring some people, but it has slowed down a little bit. Fingers crossed that things are going to start to normalize and this country is going to start to get opened up, and we will be back to hiring at a fast and furious pace. It's been hard to hire when our offices in DC, which is our headquarters, have been shut down for 6 weeks, but we're hoping by the end of May, we'll be back up and running again, and that we will be hiring and interviewing and continuing to grow our business. So that's how they would do it, though. They would go through the website. Obviously, if they want to get a hold of me, I'm sure they could probably Google me and get my email address, but I get hundreds of spam emails a day. So that's, you can probably imagine.
Well, that's why I didn't ask you for your contact details. So, James, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, found it very enlightening. Really appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, for your time today, and have a great day.
So this is Marcus Kauke signing off from the Scaleups and Hypergrowth podcast. If you'd like to come on to the podcast yourself because you think you'd be a great guest, then email me at mcauchi@sandler.com. And happy selling. Stay safe. Bye-bye.